you'd gone into summertime or something, and then it's just
No, it was my mistake. I click live. It's going to take a couple of minutes. No, it was
okay.
my mistake. It was a crazy day yesterday. It was crazy. And then we did a session with a friend of ours, and it was mind blowing. So then I couldn't go to sleep. And then I was just falling asleep. And then I don't know why, I woke up and then I heard the phone go off, and it was you.
Yeah,
So no mistakes. No mistakes at all. Here, let me make sure it's on.
yeah, everything works out perfectly in the end. So.
I give up. I give up.
I'm learning now to go with the flow because these last few weeks have just everything has gone topsy turvy anyway.
I know, because I read your stuff, and then we were gonna do something on the 22nd, and we had like 3 shows on the 22nd, and none of them went off, and we knew that it meant something. And sure enough, it was just a huge energy day. The 23rd for me was just like I would just lay down. I lay down the whole day. I just didn't move. I was just like, oh my god. But yeah, but I can see in your writings that one of the things that's coming through is that the frequency's there, it's there, and we just have to grab it. Like there's nothing to second guess ourselves about or worry about, like that's resisting us. I guess that is that. Does that sound right? I'm still half
Got to
asleep.
go to the core of our soul now, the core of our soul. And that core of our soul is stable. It's just that we mustn't get pulled in by what is happening now and on the earth and so on, because that's the last death row, of the old 3D matrix. We've got to rise above this now. And we are so being helped in this. We're not on our own. It's like I was getting pulled in because what happened is, they suddenly decided they're going to, somebody else bought the apartment above me, and then they started putting the builders in. And when they come in with these drills, you can't think because of the noise. And there was no prior warning. It was just like, okay, now we start. And I mean, I can't work at that type of thing. So I had to go and find a place outside that I could actually work during the daytime. But I found myself totally disrupted from my normal routine. And I was getting myself in a tiz because, now everything is disrupted and my schedule is such that I cannot postpone it. I've got to, because I'm booked now with soul reading 6 months in advance. So I've got
Good
like,
God.
can't do anything. And then, I was getting myself in a tiz. And then I just decided, listen here, I am not going to allow this now to disrupt me further. I've got to take charge here and really sort of affirm that everything is working out in the highest and best way, and let myself be lifted in a higher state. And then, and then I really sort of affirmed what I wish to create now in my life and how I wish to create it, and really affirm it in the I am presence, the mighty I am presence, in the present moment. And then, suddenly Monday, they still did a bit of bash. On Tuesday, from Tuesday, absolute silence. They didn't pitch. I just want to say thank you.
The power. I mean, I keep my feeling is that the biggest superpower we're going to have is our power of thought. Like I feel like that's I never would have thought that until, no pun intended, but I'm starting to get that. So how do we apply something like that? Because in the last week or so, you see a lot of people posting about Ukraine, and how do we apply that to things bigger than our personal life?
But if you want to distract people, you start a war. What else do you do?
True, that's true. That does a lot of
But
things.
there's,
That
there's nothing that instills fear more and 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 triggers memory banks more than starting a war. Okay, because you must remember, especially in Europe, where they've had wars. I mean, when I was going through, I always loved history, but I mean, if you go into history of Europe, they had war every 10 years in Europe. But since the Second World War, that has sort of like alleviated, okay. So they were okay, but as soon as war goes off somewhere, that it's like, this is going to happen again, because it's in the genes, and it's also in the soul memory bank somewhere along the line. We've all been in a war somewhere along the line. And especially the Atlantean War is now coming to the fore. And it has been triggered by this whole jolly COVID thing. That is what's triggered it. Because exactly what happened in Atlantis when they implanted control boxes into the whole populace, and literally plugged them into a mainframe computer where they could do everything with them that they wanted to. That was the end of the golden age of Atlantis when this happened. Wow. And it was the same old faction that started the wars of heaven that did that. And it's the same old faction that actually sort of, manipulate everything now, and have been for the last, since Atlantis, continued the whole thing. So this is now the last death throw of the old 3D matrix. And we've got to understand this, because I was shown absolutely with certainty this morning that the old 3D, because I asked last night, I said, can I please go to the Intergalactic Council? I want to have clarity in the highest degrees. And the clarity that I've been given is that this dismantling is now really happening at a very, very high degree, because the 3D matrix cannot hold form anymore. And we are already in the 5th. We're stepping into the 7th now, okay? You cannot allow yourself be pulled into this fear matrix. You cannot go back, okay? You've got to now only go one place, and that's forward, all right? And the thing is, we are getting help through that. And what they do is they're bombarding you with pictures, of what's going on. But the thing is, all the time you look at that, what happens? You get pulled in, because a trauma is not to be compassionate. It's not to pray for them. Of course you can. Right. But the minute you see that, what happens? Your own soul memory get triggered. Your memories of what happened at Atlantis get triggered. So you're getting pulled in whether you like it or not. I was reading something very interesting, because I just got some new books, and I've always had a great, great admiration and for Dr. Joshua David Stone's books. And he has left us in 2012, but his work is like, really was like a first guiding post for us with this ascension process. And I was reading that he was warning about that already in 1995. Wow. And I thought to myself, there you are. You see, this has all been master planned by those who know that their time is finished. But we cannot go and let ourselves be still trapped in that. It's time to step out of it. But we have to remember that we co-create, we create our own reality. We create that which we wish to live. What do you wish to live? Yeah. I actually sat down 3 days ago after all my things were happening, and I said to myself, okay, what is it that I truly wish to co-create in the new golden age, in the here and the now? And I sat down and I wrote it all down in the I am presence. And I made a point of saying, I totally wish that everything of the 3D will be totally dismantled out of my life. I am not going to get to do that anymore. It's not my scene. It's not where I wish to go and continue my journey now. When we start affirming that and we're decreeing that, immense power is released, because now we're stepping into our soul power, into the truth of who and what we in truth are. And there is our greatest lesson now as souls. We all knew before we incarnated that the old earth would cease to be. We all knew that the new earth would be born. And we as Starseeds, we as those volunteers that came in, were absolutely briefed about this before we incarnated. We were told what would happen. And we knew that a lot of us would fall asleep and go into the deep sleep of forgetfulness. But we knew that at this time, everybody would start getting woken up in the highest degree. And we all came in with a special assignment of what we needed to bring into the new earth, because we've been prepared for this over many lifetimes, not only the lifetimes on earth, but also galactic and universal. And I was shown this by the intergalactic councils. They said, look at this. Here you have it. The whole of the universe is here surrounding you and helping you. The divine within you is helping you. But you have to claim your own power and not allow anybody to take your power away. Because any area where you are disempowered, somebody else will overpower you.
Powerful. Church on Sunday Soulogy style. God, that was powerful. My heart's just going brrr. And I wonder if, like, part of what you're saying, part of it is, because I noticed something. I haven't got pulled in about Ukraine. I actually was a little bit shocked that people were being charged by it, no matter where they were coming from. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing. I was just like, wow. To me, we would be, I guess, kind of focusing or looking at something like that and really handling it at an energetic level on a more broad basis. Like not the symptom, but the problem, what needs to be dismantled. But even having said that, I remember a couple of days ago laying down during the day, knowing I needed to lay down, and I started having all these visions, probably like 15 or 20 different visions of war. And it was specifically about ethnic cleansing. So it was watching movies of men at war that were raping women. And I was watching it as an observer. I wasn't charged. I just went, wow, what's going on here? And I just let it play and let it play and let it play. And I just wondered if that was, because I knew it wasn't mine. And I've had stuff like that happen that was. But I just felt like, well, I wonder if it's just like showing itself one last time. You know, something like that.
One last time. There you are. One last time. Yeah. You know, if you go into the history, you know, that's me. I always go into history.
I'm with you. I love history.
But the history always tells you, you know, what needs to be healed. Okay. But I remember when I was in my 20s, I was for the first time introduced to the Russian Orthodox Church, okay, which is also the same. You have like in the Ukraine, etc. You also have the Orthodox Church, which is the Armenian originally, which was from the Essenes, okay, so whatever. But what happened in Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, which is fighting it. At that stage, it was the capital of Russia, okay? And the Tsar of Russia wanted to become a Christian. And then he sent out his emissaries, and he said, okay, go to the Roman Church and go to the Greek Church, which is the Orthodox Church. I want to find what is nearest to heaven. So they went out and they went to Rome, because at that stage the church was split between the Roman Church and the Orthodox Church that was more sort of like, you know, Byzantine, and of course that all the you know, the countries like Greeks and all those Balkan countries, everybody, they Orthodox. Now they came back, and when he heard the Orthodox liturgy, he said, that is what I wish to have. Now, we were introduced to that in a total retreat of 10 days in silence. And the Russian Orthodox Church, which was created in Kiev, they do not have any sermons. What they do have is just choirs singing, because he said, I want to hear the seraphim singing. So you had two choirs that were always answering them and bringing the scriptures into life and form via music, because sound actually speaks directly into your soul. So the whole of the liturgy is around music, so that you can literally feel yourself being transported into heaven.
Wow.
And when I read about the Russian Revolution and what happened there, and also what happened during this time of Stalin, when people were so persecuted and put into what happened in Siberia, the whole intellectuals, the ones that actually were woken up, like even the Christians and the Jews, were actually all sent to Siberia, into concentration camps there by Stalin. And yet, through that all, you had the most beautiful awakening within the Russian soul. And I'm talking now, you must remember, Ukraine was part of Russia then, okay? When I read those accounts of what was happening there, your greatest writers, like Solzhenitsyn, was there in the concentration camp. One of your greatest thinkers, there were mystics there that through this actually held the light steady for Russia and the Ukraine during that time.
Wow.
There is something about the soul there that is going to speak now to humankind.
Yeah, I can feel it. I didn't realize you were talking about Nicholas, the last Tsar. That was 1917, right? The revolution. And
Yeah, that's right.
But when you say that soul, I can see what you're saying. Like, I mean, that collective soul is going to speak now. Kind of like you're speaking.
It's going to speak.
Kind of like you're speaking today. I mean, I can see, like, I don't know, like you're finding your voice. I don't know how to explain it. Not that we haven't had our voices, but I think this is one of the things we've been talking about, is this feminine voice coming out. And maybe that's part of the soul speaking now.
Yes, it is. Because you know that we have to find our voice now and speak. We have to find our truth and live it. Most people are always afraid to speak their truth because of what happened before. But we've got to get over this thing of being persecuted. Okay? That's past. I'm always told that the souls now have come in with extra protection. I have, in the last few weeks, when all of this came, I was brought right back to my Qatar lifetime. And I was brought back to my Essene lifetime, and all those lifetimes, when I was persecuted because of speaking my truth. And then I had to go, and I did it with my White Flame group, because I'm teaching the White Flame teachings now, which have been returned to planet Earth because the White Flame has been returned. It's the flame of purity. It's the flame that incorporates all the other 12 frames, which was removed when Atlantis fell, and it's now being fully returned. And that group that has gathered around me are just amazingly how they are just changing in a beautiful way and stepping into their power. But what was shown me is that there is a deep mother healing which now is taking place. It's the divine mother healing. The divine mother, the goddess that was thrown out of religion, thrown out of society because they feared her power. They feared the intuitive voice. They feared the intuitive heart knowing that knows the truth. You can't lie to your own intuitive voice. It will always tell you what the truth is. It will resonate in the deepest part of your soul. And as I did this Divine Mother healing, I was shown how I had to take my little child, my little girl, into my arm and really heal. Let that little child feel what it is like to be totally loved with unconditional love, and to have herself nurtured into the truth of who and what she is, fully as one with the Divine Mother. And then I was told that the biggest healing which is now taking place is that of the emotional body of humankind. That is our feeling side. It's there in all that we have not forgiven within ourselves and others. It's there in the deep unspokenness of what we could never express. It's there in the deepest woundedness that has come through many, many generations. It's got to heal now. And that is why the Divine Feminine is literally pouring in her love into humanity. And it goes directly into the heart center. You know, it was so beautiful that even the men that were in our group were picking up how the white dove in the symbol of a Divine Mother love is moving into the heart center, and how these white doves are coming out of the heart center. So in other words, the men are being brought back to the greatest mother healing within themselves too. But you must remember that as the mother heals, the father heals. Because a father was birthed by a mother.
That's right. That's right. That's why I say God is a woman, because only women can birth. So
Exactly.
that pretty much says it all. There's a couple of things that popped up when you were talking. One is I shared a video, and it was of a Russian Orthodox church, and I believe it was in Kiev right before everything started. And they were praying for peace. And the priest was walking up to the altar, and a white dove came in and landed at the very top of the altar on the center. It was amazing. And then and in the last few days, you mentioned the Cathars and the Essenes. And that's always been, as you know, that's always resonated with me, even long before I met you. And I also had this period where I was watching movies or it was not so much watching movies, it was actually feeling it, feeling the different ways that I was killed. Like the throat being slit and, being hanged, all these different ways, being persecuted like you were talking about. So that, yeah, I don't know why that's happening at the same time. But this thing about, or the way you explain this, and just looking at it from my perspective as a man, and what I've been experiencing, I think, as a result of the masculine lineage, such as these visions and these feelings, it feels very much like that. And something else that came up when you were talking about feeling, I noticed in the most extraordinary way, the first time, to the degree that it happened, I came into this instant knowing of my nervous system, and having a higher sensitivity of it, and realizing that the tenseness in my muscles, the tenseness in my body, was all stemming from this nervousness. And it was almost like it just came in and showed itself and left. I think I've been calmer since. Not that I'm a real nervous person, but it was a really deep kind of look into myself and I could feel it. And it was shocking. I went, wow, like that's, it was unconscious, but wow, that was always 24 hours a day is basically how it came through. So yeah, there's a lot of great information. I'm glad I
Our
had that extra
spiritual,
hour. I'm glad I had that extra hour because that was a heck of a download. Thank you. Yeah, keep going.
our spiritual bodies extend in some that are spiritually awakened 21 kilometers outside of us. Okay. Can you imagine how much that energy field is radiating out, but also feeding you back what is going on around you? That is why protection and shielding is so very, very important. I always teach it to all my students so that nothing and no one can enter your energy field that is not of the purest God force light. It is so important now because I've been speaking to health workers here, all right, energy workers, that's fine. And I had one young man who said to me, Judith, when I get home, I've got to clear my energy field to the highest degree, although I do everything in my power not to take on anybody's energy. And I said to him, is it not that you are taking on fear-based energy? And he said, you've nailed it. We as light workers at this time cannot afford to take on fear energy of anyone. There lies our challenge in mastery, that we will now be in the still point that is our soul and our heart center. In absolute still point, where we are fully anchored in our soul. And you must remember your soul is amplified by your soul group, the monad. We actually can extend that now to not only the planetary or our soul group, but also on galactic levels and universal levels. So when you pull that in, you are literally standing in the fullness of a universal soul you in truth are. When I do soul readings and I realize the caliber of souls that have now been incarnating after the Second World War, these are highly advanced, evolved master souls. It's time to wake up and to realize you're not just anybody. You came in to this life fully enabled to stand in your power. And there lies our greatest soul lesson. You are not powerless. You are powerful. But if you allow the outside world to drown out your own inner voice, you can't hear. And you absorb everything that is busy putting into you. And that's exactly where you need to take the mastery of your own life and say, I will not allow this. I will be very, very discerning about what I allow in my energy field, what I allow to see, watch, what I'm allowed to read, what I'm allowed in any form or way to come into my being.
It's like more important than food. I don't know if you should be the people's general or the people's minister. It's like you're on fire. I mean, wow.
I'm not doing this. It's transmitted through me. I must admit it's fine. But you must remember that all of this just comes from love.
Yes. That's always been very obvious with you. Yes.
You know, when we are in the heart of love, there is something about the power of love, you know, that I'm getting to understand more and more. We always think, you know, love is just, you know, it's not powerful. It's not, you know, it's something like, oh, shame, you know, I'm taking you in my arms, and oh, shame, you know, you're such a poor thing. But we forget that love also means boundaries. It means I know where I start and where you stop, and vice versa.
Right.
It also means that you love yourself so much that when you give yourself permission to live your truth, to stand in your truth, to be the power of love, you give everybody else permission to.
It is the power. The power.
It is the power. There is no greater power than the power of love.
Mm-mm.
You know, it's almost like, you know, in the 3D, we never gave ourselves permission to really be ourselves.
Yeah. True.
And now we're breaking free of that. We suddenly see, well, this is who I am in truth. Then just live it. There is so much beauty in you. There is so much love in you. There is so, you know, uh, the divine makes you unique with divine attributes. And the divine lives life through you. You are the eyes, the mouth, the whole being of living is the divine experiencing life through you. Excuse me. You know, I was in tears the other morning when I felt this deep, deep, deep divine mother love just pouring through me. You know, we all had mothers that were not perfect, okay. But then they had mothers that were not perfect either. Like we all had fathers that were not perfect, and then whatever, went for generations. But when you experience the purity of mother love in the most beautiful way, you literally feel how everything is washed away from you. It just dissolves. It goes on. And there is only love. You are literally held in the arms of love, and you become that love. It is so beautiful, because when you are in that state of love, you cannot be other than love. Judgment goes away because you feel I can't judge anybody because I know I'm judging myself. I cannot say this is right or wrong anymore because I am all of that. And that is why the heart is the still point. If you look at the hurricane, it's always got a still point right in the middle. And whatever is going on there does not affect that still point. And that is what we now need to seek. And that still point is love. There is nothing else. It's love. But that love has to start with yourself in the deepest shadow and also the highest light. You are both. You can't just cut half of it off and then you're imbalanced. You need to have that balance between the positive and negative. It balances each other out. And the minute that you balance it out, you reach a state of equilibrium. And then you are open to divinity.
We're doing good, aren't we?
You know, nature is teaching us so much because, you know, the animals and every plant and every plant life has already ascended into the fifth and seventh dimension. If you really connect deeply with the new Mother Earth and ground yourself perfectly in the new Mother Earth, you will start to feel how the animal and the plant kingdom, and I'm talking about the whales and the dolphins, everything, are already there, and they are helping us through this transition. Just like the angels and the archangels, and everyone is here helping us. You know, it's so beautiful when I talk to light workers, how aware they are becoming of Mother Nature, how aware they're becoming of the animals, how aware they're becoming of nature and what nature is telling them. They're also becoming aware through this whole thing about how they are called now to start speaking out about those things which they never ever spoken about. Because when people don't want to tell you, they speak to plants or they're telling to plants, because there was always a stigma, a fear of being labeled you're insane if you start doing that. Mm. And yet nature is speaking to you. And how does this come? Telepathically.
Yeah. Yeah, I went to visit some friends they live on top of a mountain, and it's a husband and wife, mm-hmm. and they have 3 dogs and a parrot. And it was a very loud room. I mean, I was having a normal conversation with them, and all I could hear were the animals. It was amazing. Yeah, I feel that. I can feel what you're saying. I can feel nature, you know, the trees back here, animals. Like there's the birds, especially for me. There's something going on. I mean, you can feel it. And it's quite amazing. It helps to ground. It helps to ground me, like if I get off a little bit. Like even if I'm in my head and I'm walking to the car and then all of a sudden I hear the birds say, hey, wake up. Just remember where you are, or whatever.
Birds are angels. They are messengers. Hmm. And if you become aware of the birds, you also see that they have messages for you.
Yeah, no doubt.
And we, you know, to me, the most beautiful thing is if you go outside and you hear all these birds singing, or even if you're quiet and still and you hear the birds outside, that they always will sing praise songs in the mornings to the new day, and they will sing praise songs to the day that is moving, that is going out, is going, you know, leaving out. And I thought myself, you know, if we as human beings would do the same, our whole life would change.
True.
You know, I just sat and listened, because when I was waiting for you to come on, I was going back to an Armenian chant, you know, in the original Aramaic language, which was spoken by the Essenes, because the original Lord's Prayer was in Aramaic and not in Hebrew. And I just closed my eyes and allowed that whole chanting to come through. And that is exactly what we've forgotten, the power of sound. We've forgotten the power of music to lift us into that state where we become into oneness and harmony. And if you listen to all the sacred chants all over the world, that's exactly what they were there given to you, so that you would get into that higher state of oneness. And that is why I've been teaching my students this toning, singing. You know, the R-I-E-O-U opens the heart center, opens your whole energy centers so that you can be receptive to the divine within you. And with the divine feminine returning, that is being returned to humankind. And in the ancient mystery schools, they knew that if you start reading Pythagoras, He was one of the high masters of the mystery schools. He knew the power of music and tones. You start listening to the Slovakia frequencies. There you are. They're tuning you into that higher frequency. So you see, we are given these amazing musicians now. And those ancient ones who are bringing us back so that we are being lifted in that higher state. There are so many tools around that we can start using. But if we allow our day to be overwhelmed by whatever is on television, whatever is thrown at us with pictures and sounds of it, we get into overwhelm. Mm-hmm. You can't listen to your own inner voice anymore. I switched off the TV and radio years ago, and I don't even miss it. Because I actually cultivate, it's almost like I seek silence these days more than anything else.
Yeah.
Because silence speaks.
Yeah.
It is only in silence that you can truly hear. And we need more time. You will find, I find in the last few years or so, I really seek alone time.
Yeah.
I seek that alone time because it's in that alone time that you can truly hear. It's in that alone time that you can connect into the omnipresence and feel it. It's in that alone time that you can have guidance in the highest degrees, because now the outside noise is not there anymore. You go inside yourself, and that's where divinity lies, is inside yourself. That's your center. That's your deepest connection to the divine, is inside yourself. You know, once you start experiencing omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience, that absolute oneness with the divine and all that is, you will always seek it again. Whatever the day brings, you will start centering yourself again. And you may ask for it as well. And allow that divinity within you to be you and you it, so that you are one. That is what life is about in this 5th to 7th dimensional state, where we go into that unity, the harmony, the oneness, where it doesn't matter if you differ from me. It doesn't matter if you have a bit of a different opinion of me. But in the end, we are all one.
Right.
Because everybody is unique. And within that uniqueness, we are one. Yeah. There's not one that's more or less than the other one. We are all perfection. And we are all love. Because in truth, we all want to be loved for who and what we in truth are. Not for what we pretend, not what other people project upon us, just for ourselves. So that you feel safe with me and I feel safe with you.
Yes. Just like you were saying about being in the arms, or taking your child, your inner child, into your arms. Or the experience you had, I think that's what it was, when you woke up and you were in the arms and you washed, everything was clean, like it was that feeling. Yeah. God. I didn't know that there was a connection between the Armenians and the Essenes, because my lineage, I think, is very close to yours, from, just based on what we've exchanged before. But one thing, I never really even met Armenians and an Armenian, to my knowledge, until I was working in LA and back in the early 2000s. And every time I would meet an Armenian person, I felt like I was looking in my own eyes. It was weird. I thought, what is that? What is an Armenian? I hadn't heard of them, and then I did some research, but I didn't go too deep. I didn't know there was a connection. It's amazing how these things are being shown to us in so many different ways.
You must remember when Jesus lived, what in that time, Mary Magdalene, that the Israelis, well, the original Israel tribes, you must remember, most of them, sort of were not there anymore when the only two tribes actually survived. And those were the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. During the time of Solomon, it was just the two. The rest were all sort of like, because of the wars that were going on with the Persian Empire was taking over, etc. And so when the Persian Empire then sort of like conquered the Jews again in Jerusalem, they were all taken out in imprisonment in Persia. And if that is a time when the Jews really sort of like awakened again in the deepest sense and so on. So they returned back when they were set free. They were returned back to Jerusalem, but the Hebrew language had actually sort of been forgotten along the way with all. But it was even more so that in the time of Jesus they spoke the Armenian language and not Hebrew. But the Armenian language, according to Lars Moule, he was separating it, is actually what they if you go to the origin, there are 5 languages, and actually the keys of Enoch specify it, that were given to earth. And Armenian is one of the, actually what they call the angelic language.
Wow. That's wild.
So that is why when you listen to the original Lord's Prayer in Armenian, I absolutely know it from my heart that is speaking into my heart. I cannot explain it, but it was, to me, when I first heard it, it was like, I'm home. This is speaking into my soul. But with what this makes these languages even more profound is that they do not use vowels, okay, because the vowels were considered so holy and sacred that they were not used, just like the Hebrew language. That's why every single letter in that language is holy and sacred, and each one has got hidden meanings. And actually, if you meditate on each letter, you start having the divine guidance coming through and insights. Hebrew works exactly on the same principles. That's why the Kabbalists, for instance, meditate on every single letter. And if you actually start reading the text, the original text of the Bible, the Torah, they actually have so many different meanings that come out that you can interpret those texts anyway that is it speaks to you. The Armenian language is exactly the same. That's why with the translations of the Bible into different sort of like languages, the original meaning of it got lost along the way.
Wow. So the Aramaic language has no vowels.
Yeah. But I mean, then you can put them in if you speak it in any case, but not when I write it.
So what about the chant, the mantra? Did you learn that or did you download it? The one you were talking about that you did today. I think it was Aramaic or Armenian, the chant.
The chant is actually no, I don't know. I don't repeat it, but there are actually prayers that are still coming from the Armenian. If you read Lars Moule, it's Lars Muhl. He actually has done research on the Aramaic and he has seen his teachings for his whole life through. And he's got lovely books, The Law of Light and something, I couldn't remember what the other one is, where he actually gives you the Armenic prayers and how that actually comes in. And they are very powerful prayers that I've been doing now every morning since I've read them of myself. Well, this is exactly where I feel I'm being lifted into a higher state. And so if you actually start saying also the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, you will just be lifted into a higher state, which you cannot explain, whether you know it or not. But you have it where you actually, like, the Holy Spirit is a rukakusha. I also had Malkutsa Dishmaya. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but it's feeling it. You start repeating those, and you will immediately start being lifted into a higher state, which you don't even understand, but it is a heavenly state. To me, these teachings are coming more and more to the fore. And I have been told that more and more scrolls and books will now appear because they were so suppressed and they were so persecuted that these just went underground. And they're starting to come forward again. But what's more, when this whole persecution came, and the thing is, the souls then were from the mystery schools, okay, especially in France and those places where this happened. I was always told that the Qatars and those that actually were sort of like bring it to you, the Qatar bishop at that stage was a woman. She was not a man. It's actually the false names that have been given because the Qatars wanted to shield the woman because they knew that is where, because the ministry that was held there was held by the woman. And Montsegur was actually a goddess temple. It was never, ever a castle. They bought Esclamont de Foix, who was the Qatar bishop, was the one that actually said we need to put a fortress around it when the Third Crusade was launched. But in that, they actually had the priestesshood that was there. You must remember the males were also there. They made a vow and said, we will not lose this. We will have this programmed into our souls. Yeah. So that when we come back in those times when the new golden age will rise and the Christ consciousness will be returned, that we will remember and we will bring that back to humanity. That is what's happening now, because they've all incarnated again. And this includes the Templars, because the Templars were part of the same families and the same groupings. And they helped to actually smuggle the Qatars' manuscripts and things out, and also people out of that area. There is so much now that is going to come to the fore as humanity is ready for this again, and they will not misuse whatever it is there. You will only be given that, and you'll only be triggered if your heart is pure, because the divine and those Gaia guides always read your intent. If this is activated within you, what will you do with it? Will you use it for self-service, or will you use it for greater service with great love? The Qatar Book of Love, which was actually that which Mary Magdalene brought to France from the Essenes, back to her homeland where she was born, was one of the Qatar's holy books, and it had 144 volumes. And that will only be fully returned when we have stepped fully into the new golden age. Because we first have to awaken to the deepest power of love within us before we can access that again, and it will be given to us. That's why Mary Magdalene is now overseeing this whole process of ascension with Jeshua, with there's Universal Angel Mary, there is Archangel Mary, Mother Mary, and Isis. Isis was the one that brought the mystery schools to Earth in the first place, when she came here from Sirius and Orion with Osiris. So the deepest mystery school teachings were always that of it, because Isis, Osiris, and Horus They just later changed their names, but then finally they all came from the same source of that.
Yes.
And those mystery schools were brought all over the place. They were right into the things. That was during the Lion Kingdom. And later, of course, with all the destructions and things that happened, they had to go deeper and deeper underground. That's why, as that is, also people couldn't quite access what was in the seventh dimension. You must remember Atlantis was already in the fifth. They couldn't access that anymore. And when Atlantis fell, you had these schools that actually held that knowledge, but they could not understand it anymore. You understand? Because they couldn't move into that seventh dimensional state.
Wow.
But we now, as we change and we move into that higher state now again, we will start accessing it again. And it will come as the deepest knowing within yourself. That's why we have to learn to trust our inner voice. We've got to learn to trust our inner guidance. I always encourage my students, and I say, if something comes to you in a dream, or whether you know it for sure, go write it down and date it. And that way you don't forget it. And then you can see how you are guided as all starts falling into place. There is so much being activated now, which has lain dormant for so many billions of years. The old earth is no more, but that which was programmed in the first and created in the first creation, that is awakening now. Those are the arcs. They are the pyramids. And don't think it's just the Giza pyramids and those things. They're the ones that we can still see. There are many of them that are invisible that we cannot see. Because we can't tune it. You can tune it to them, but you can't see them with these eyes. You've got to use this eye.
They're everywhere. Wow. It's a whole different perspective on what's happening. I mean, this is what I've known is happening. I've never heard it really explain this in depth and with so much passion, but yeah, it just reminds me that however this is unfolding, I've got no clue. Because like the way you say, the information or the code or the awareness is going to come in. It's going to come in. You're going to feel it. You're going to know it. And that really describes the journey of the last 10 years. For most of us, it's been, 2012. But yeah, it's just been more frequent. Just like what I was telling you about my nervous system. Just in that moment, I don't really fully know what happened, but I know that I became aware of the depth of the connection between my imbalance and my nerve. I was able to see it in a way. And it felt like, for lack of a better way to say it, that it was cured at that point. There was some type of healing or alignment that occurred. And that's how this information is coming in. And the way you explain it makes it really easy to see that. Do you think that we'll be able to see with the body, the two eyes, for instance, what we can't see now?
You will be able to realize it. The thing is that first your third eye have got to awaken, and also your psychic center is directly linked to your heart. As a lower of it, we have three centers, three inner suns. The one is the lower body that sits in your sacral area there and your solar plexus. Then you have your middle part, that is the higher heart, and then you've got your upper chakras and confined. The thing is, your lower body is what needs cleansing out the most now. That is the 3D body that still keeps us in the fear mode, that keeps us into this programming mode, where we believe everything that's been put into us. In the meantime, it's all false information. That is most of it, 99.9%. I come back to the discerning. I learned to be discerning ages ago when I was librarian. When I read, I read everything under the sun. Some of it I was forced to.
I was going to ask you that. How many books do you think you've read in your life?
I think it's about 30 or 40,000.
God, I've probably done like 2,500, and I haven't read in years. But God,
but also, when you librarian, people come, and they ask for information,
right.
And so I often, I had to go and search for information that I had no problem, even come across. But what I've learned is, science, you can't just take one bit, okay, and say, well, this is the truth. Right. You've got to look at all the others, like science, most scientists just focus on one discipline, okay, one knowledge. But all the others also have knowledge. So if you really want to know what's going on, you've got to study all of them. Yeah. And in the end, you will see they all come back to one universal truth. Yeah. So to me, that's always made me understand that I've got to question what I read. Is this the truth? Is it the only truth for me? And does this resonate with me in the highest sense? If it does not resonate with me, it's not for me. Right. Other people can believe it. That's their problem. It's not mine. I learned that so much because it's so, to me, it is, I was told, when my whole life caved in and I had to start all over again, I was literally told, go deeply in yourself and listen to that inner voice and write it down. Because I was given information that I had no clue what it was going to be and how it came into. But I had to trust that whatever was given to me would make sense at some time or other. And It does now.
I love history too. I'm just curious too, like in your journey, you were a librarian and you were reading all the time and you loved history. Were you already aware as you were reading the history that something wasn't right or that they weren't telling the true history or that type of thing? Were you already aware of that?
Yes, especially because of the apartheid years. In the apartheid years, I was just telling this the other day, when we had like meetings, okay? And I know the people from overseas would comment on it. They say they can stand on a podium in South Africa and say anything they like. And people will just nod their head and say yes. They won't ask questions, anything. Okay. Mm. But what happened is because the security police were always sitting in, and listening. All right. So what happened with the South Africans, they went out of that building or out of the church even because they used to monitor the church services as well, okay? And they would go home and then they would discuss what they heard because, okay, that time there wasn't any other spying devices that were around like we have now with our cell phones and whatever else, you see. So it's inherent that also with that, when the apartheid was dismantled and the truth came out of what had happened, we were shocked because we never knew that was happening. You understand? I always had a sense of that because you see, as librarians, we went into the black areas, we went into the colored areas, we went into all the different areas, you see, because we had libraries there. But I'm so grateful because in the library milieu, we were dealing with all the different races. We were dealing with all the different religions. Okay. Mm. So I read the Bhagavad Gita. I read the Quran. I read everything, because I wanted to know what they believe in. I wanted to know what is it that you believe in? What is it that you wanted, to bring you into being? I didn't want to judge people. I wanted to know what they believe in. You can only communicate with people directly if you know where they come from. And, with I'm really grateful with that also that my parents taught me the same. They always said to me, don't just judge, go and listen to these people. Don't just say because somebody is black, I don't want to have anything to do with it. You see, you have to also understand where they come from. If you don't understand what the people's traditions are, if you don't understand what their customs are, you cannot relate to them. When you're going to do that? And that's exactly what when these colonies came in, like, the British colony and the empire or whatever, they actually projected the Western ideas upon the black people. Okay, and upon all whom they conquered. And the black people have always said, this is not our soul. Okay? Right. You are projecting something on us that is not our soul, it's not our truth. There's a beautiful book that was written by Credo Mutwa, who is a high Shanusi of the African people. It is a high priest.
He's the one that David Icke did some interviews with.
Yes, that's right. And he said something very profound in his books. I've never forgotten that. He said, you gentlemen of science, you come to Africa and you tell us what our history is. We know what our history is because we have orally, over many, many millions of years, kept that history intact. They were not allowed to even change one single word of that. They had to completely keep this in their memory banks. And then they would tell these scientists, but you are wrong, this is not what our history says. What did they do? They arrogantly just cut this all out and say, this is what is the truth. So what you got? You've got misinformation all the way.
Mm-hmm. God, what's your favorite book? I'm just curious. To read 40, 50,000 books, like what are your favorite 2 or 3 books?
I've got so many.
It's like trying to pick favorite souls, right? I'm sure there are.
There's so many of them. There's some that are just jewels, that you just sort of like keep in your heart ever. And I think one of them, Louisa's Hay books have always sort of taken to me in a great deal, like especially one, You Can Heal Your Life. I think that's one of the most amazing books that's ever written. Wow. There's Lars Moore's books speak to my soul very much now because of the scenes that are in it. There's Wayne Dyer. There's there's all these people that were the forerunners now to wake up us, and a lot of them have left us. Yeah. There's Lawrence van der Poos, a South African, is actually he actually he grew up upon the Bushman people here in South Africa, and he in his books recorded their whole mythology and their way of looking, because they always worked with nature and with Mother Earth and so on. And there's beautiful discussions. For instance, there's one book where his friend was Dr. Carl Jung, and the psychiatrist.
And what's this guy's name?
Lawrence. It's Sir. He actually got the title. He was knighted by the British Empire. Lawrence. That's Laurence.
Yes.
And then Van, that's a VAN. And then another letter, and it's now Der, that's DER. And then capital POST, Lawrence van der Post. Wow. He's actually Prince Charles's godfather. Actually, he's a godfather of Prince William, because wow. Prince Charles is really good. But, he in this book, we had these profound conversations with C.J. Jung about consciousness. When I read that book, it changed my life forever, because it made me understand that the ancient people, like the San, which actually are the oldest race of people in this world, that they were in South Africa, because when Jan van Riebeeck, that's the Dutch, came to Cape Town, they were the only people that were in most of South Africa. because the other, like the Zulus and so on, came from Middle Africa, came down, and they these bring it. And they actually, their DNA goes back 250,000 years. They live very much into the heart of nature, and they were able to actually span dimensions with their shamanic journeys.
I'm sure.
When you start going deeply into the sand, they actually understood that there was soul in everything, soul in the animals, soul in all of creation. And they said they came from the Pleiades.
Yeah.
Because the Pleiades were the creator God. That's what they always said. So when the Pleiades came onto the horizon, they would literally celebrate the return of life to Earth. But what is so beautiful about them, they never ever killed an animal just because of the killing for it. And their most sacred antelope in Africa was the eland. The eland is the only big antelope that has got fat around its heart. So they actually asked the eland to sacrifice itself so that the people could survive. And then the eland would actually sacrifice itself out for the greater good of the clan, of whatever. And then the fat around the heart, they would immediately give to the elderly and the ailing in their tribe. And they would use every single part of that eland. But what is so amazing, if you read about what the colonists report, that they could actually blow on the eland horn and the torrents of rain would come down.
That's wild. And we think we've been doing stuff. I mean, like, wow.
We don't know anything.
I saw this
We have
video.
lost.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go on.
Go ahead.
We have lost our soul.
Yeah. Well, I think this is what you're talking about too with the whole nature thing. I saw this video last month. It was after I talked to you. It was it's an American guy named David Cho, and he went down to the Congo when he was 18 years old. He thought there was a dinosaur. He saw a National Geographic thing about the possibility of the last dinosaur being there, and he actually went to look for it, not knowing it was a third world country and so on and so on. So he's been going back for like 20 years. But anyway, he met a pygmy, I guess we would call it a pygmy tribe, or a tribe of shorter people. And so, because he got lost in the Congo, and so he's developed a relationship with them. But anyway, he was telling the story in, I think, one of his most recent visits, like in the last couple of years. And he spent the day with them, or spent the night with them, or a few days with them. And that he was just totally blown away by their life. Like he said, when they laid down, when the sun went down, they laid down, they went to bed. Everybody was acting like little kids. They got up in the morning, and he went outside with one of the guys, and the guy made a bird call, and all the birds came and started talking to him, and then the birds started to show him where the prey was. And they were actually hunting baboons because the white settlers or whatever, or civilization, had come in and run off all the other game. But it was a very holy thing, and he just talked about how in tune they were with everything. Right, and even made some references to some of the oral history as you were talking about. Wow.
I'd always said, the old Zulus, they would literally, the bush telegraph of the African people worked better than our cell phones today.
Yeah.
They could actually communicate in ways that when the settlers came with the colonists, they could never understand, how they always knew everything, but they knew.
Yeah. Powerful history there. It's powerful. God. Spending the morning with you is like, this has been amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, on so many levels, like I know that I'm not just talking to Judith Kusel, but like even like your feminine energy, like I don't know how to explain it, but it's showing what's happening, I guess is what I'm saying. From my eyes, we've been talking about it, we've been hearing about it, but like I don't know, maybe after this 22nd of February thing, as we got into March, it just feels incredible. And I had an incredible experience last night with Morgan and a friend in a session, and Isis showed up, which I don't think that's ever happened with me. And I actually was told to observe the two of them, and it was amazing. It was just amazing. I think after we got done, all three of us hit the couch and got knocked out for like 2 hours. But yeah, there's something about all of the things we've been talking about that's actually taking hold, and it's more than palpable, which is what you're personifying that. And it's just amazing to me. And you look about 10 years younger. I don't know what you're doing over there, what you're doing to your DNA, but you look like you're getting younger rapidly. And you're not
My body is going through a lot of calibration at the moment.
Yeah, you and me both. When you
I did it, yeah.
No, I'm laughing because when you were talking about, what are we going to do with it? I love the way you say that too. Like here's where everything's at. Now, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to, buy into the fear stuff and watch this or watch that? And I'm sitting there laughing and going, well, I don't really have that problem. And my problem is, and according to a lot of other people, it's we're laying on the couch all day. We can't move. And the biggest ego challenges we have is like, you need to get up and do something, and then going through that whole thing of like, no, you don't, because your body's saying to, yeah. But yeah, the body's just been, I felt like, I think today wasn't too bad. I don't know why today wasn't too bad, probably because of you, because I didn't sleep much. But previous 2-3 days, I wake up, I feel like I've just been beaten. And I'm drinking water and I'm juicing, and but wow.
I was thinking it's really these last 3 weeks have been a challenge, that regard is for me incredibly.
Yeah.
But they actually said to me, "You're being recalibrated in a holiday." And actually, this morning it felt like we have stepped into a totally new existence now. It's like, okay, even yesterday I felt it. It was like, okay, you're just going to wake up and realize you're not the same as you ever been before.
Yeah.
And to me, that is what's happening now. It's we're going to see more and more how we actually changing at all degrees, and then we will just say the next day, gee, I don't think that's me anymore.
Yeah.
It's amazing what's happening.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I was telling Morgan that yesterday. I said, I don't know how to explain this, but I feel like, because I was reflecting on the time spent on the couch, and I think we came out of the session. I'm like, man, I got to lay down. And I was just saying that in that dialogue, Big Todd and Little Todd, I had gotten, in the last 24 hours or whatever, that, hey, it's almost like you're hibernating. It's like the energy of hibernation. You're actually energetically fattening up. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Because it does feel like it's not going to last. Like you can feel the energy and the lightness of being, but it comes, and then you kind of hibernate and energetically fatten up. But I feel like, yeah, we're about to really step out onto the dance floor here, and this is going to be pretty amazing. And I really appreciate your perspective and your explanation on Ukraine or any issue, because you could just put any other program or suggested programming topic or agenda in the name of in place of that name, because it's really, you're right. It's either it's not a little bit of something, or I mostly do this. It's an all or nothing proposition, really. Just like the council told you, it's up to you, and that you is all of us. So, yeah. I'm going to have to lay down after listening to you for 2 hours. This is like the best show ever. But I think it's a
All
sign
right.
of the time. Yeah, I mean, seriously. I mean, and something's going on too, because I do track a lot of metrics, just to keep an eye on things and try to understand things. And I've noticed that, like your frequency, which I look at mostly in the shows we do together, it's expanded dramatically. Like, I don't know what's going on. I just know it's going the right direction. And I think the last 2 or 3 shows are like, in terms of like viewership, which you have to add up all the different platforms we have, it's like in the top 15, top 10, like the last 2 or 3 we've done. Like, I'm talking like 15, 20,000 views within 30 days. I mean, that's a lot for the stuff we do. So I think that's a good sign. And I'm happy you're here. I'm happy you're here. I can't wait till the day I can wrap my arms around you.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I'm expanding, and not expanding, but it's not me. It's what's coming through me.
Yeah.
And I'm always told, you signed up for this millions of years ago. So here we are.
You bought the ticket, take the ride. Quit your complaining. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
The thing is, we can't have ego in this type of thing. It's not about, the persona or who you are on earth.
Yeah.
It's about your soul and the assignment that you took on, getting here. I know in the beginning when all of this was happening, I say, did I really assign for this? To think this.
I love those memes with the people with the funny faces, like the little kid, and I signed up for this. Yeah. I think we've all been there. I have found that recently, this is interesting. Like probably since the last time we talked, like over the last few weeks, I found that I keep going back to my younger self. Like, I want to say like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. And it's not so much specific events, it's a frequency. It's like this, I love everything. I can remember that as a kid. I just love everything. I love you, God. And this is a little kid, I love all the people of the world. I love everything that I know and don't know. I mean, it's this frequency of I guess, of love. And I think for me, I kind of look back and I went, do I still carry that? And then I get to, yes, you absolutely do. And then I realized that the only barrier between that is just simply all these things that I believed. And let's just say the harshness of life or the traumas or whatever it's been. But I feel like that I don't know. We did a little channel last night when you messaged me. So now it's 5:00 in the morning. I don't get to lay down with Morgan very often, and I just saw that she was on when I messaged you. So we just got on the phone, and then it went silent, and she starts channeling, and that was something that came in, is what you were talking about, how things have changed now, how this is gonna really take hold and affect our consciousness to the point that it's going to be, just a total life changer, game changer, which is really what you're saying. So thank you so much. I love you very much. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for the education, inspiration, motivation, and the download.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me back. It's always, sort of just, and I say I would like to meet you in person one day and also give you a hug. It will happen together. We will. Amazing things will start happening. It's everything will just open up in a totally different way, and I'm just so grateful that I can share with you and everybody else. I'm so grateful that you are here listening in, and may you all find the deepest soul connection within you, and the deepest truth within you, and the deepest love that you in truth are. You are love. There's nothing else that you are but love. Thank you for being brave enough to be on this planet at this time. We all will one day need to have special crowns given to us and crown of glory as we get to be here. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah. Okay. All right. That was